She thought she had it all figured out, until the day she crossed paths with the one woman she could never outsmart. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Claire. I was 28 when all of this started, and back then, I thought my life was finally falling into place. I grew up in a middle-class home, nothing fancy, but I was proud of how far I had come. I worked hard, kept my head down, and always believed if you gave love and loyalty, it would come back to you. That belief was my biggest mistake. For 3 years, I was engaged to Ethan. He was 30, handsome in the kind of way that made people notice when he walked into a room, and he had a smile that could make you forget your worries. Everyone told me how lucky I was to have him, and for a while, I believed it. He could be charming, funny, the type who remembered small details and made me feel like I mattered. But there were cracks in his charm I ignored. He was the kind of man who loved attention, and I told myself it was harmless. Then there was Samantha. She had been my friend since college, the type of friend who slid into your life and made herself comfortable before you even realized. She was 29 at the time, always bold, always laughing the loudest in the room. To others, she seemed like the life of the party, but to me, she was supposed to be something more. My best friend, the person I trusted with everything. She was also the person who seemed just a little too interested in Ethan. At first, I brushed it off. The way she leaned in too close when she talked to him, the way her eyes lingered on him a second too long, even the jokes she made about how, if you don't marry him, I will. I told myself it was harmless teasing, that I was overthinking. She was my best friend, after all. What reason would I have to doubt her? Looking back, I realize I should have listened to that small voice in my head. Ethan would sometimes light up when Samantha entered the room in a way I didn't see when it was just the two of us. They shared jokes I wasn't part of. When I asked about it, Ethan brushed it off, telling me I was imagining things. Samantha laughed it off, saying I was being too serious, and I let it go. The truth is, betrayal rarely shows itself in one big moment. It comes in small pieces, little signs you talk yourself out of believing. That's exactly what I did. I convinced myself everything was fine, that the people I loved most would never hurt me. I was wrong, and while I thought Samantha was the one I needed to watch out for, I had no idea another woman was about to enter my life, one who would change everything in ways I couldn't have imagined. It started slowly, in ways that were easy to dismiss at the time. Samantha began showing up more often, not just as my friend, but as someone who seemed to be a part of my relationship with Ethan. If we were planning dinner, she would suggest the restaurant. If Ethan and I were talking about taking a trip, she somehow found a way to invite herself along. At first, I told myself it was fine. She was my best friend, and maybe she just enjoyed spending time with us. But little by little, it stopped feeling like I had much of a say in my own plans. There were evenings when I would come home expecting a quiet night with Ethan, only to find Samantha already there, sitting on the couch with him, laughing about some story I wasn't part of. She gave Ethan advice about our relationship as if she were the one dating him. She'd say things like, "Oh, Ethan, you shouldn't let Claire boss you around like that," or "Claire worries too much, you just need to ignore her." She always said it with a smile, like it was a joke, but the sting was still there. Ethan would laugh along, and I would be left feeling like the odd one out in my own home. I noticed Ethan pulling away, though I didn't want to admit it at the time. He became quieter with me, less affectionate. When we were alone, his attention seemed distant, as if part of him was somewhere else. I told myself he was just stressed with work, that maybe I needed to be more patient. But the truth was right in front of me. He didn't light up the same way around me anymore. Whenever I tried to bring it up, he brushed me off. "You're reading too much into things," he'd say. Or, "Sam's just a friend, don't be jealous." He made me feel like I was being unreasonable, like the problem was in my head. And Samantha? She would act sweet to my face, but had a way of slipping in little comments that stayed with me long after she left. "Ethan deserves someone who can relax and have fun," she'd say, glancing at me with a smile. Or, "Not every guy wants to settle down so fast, Claire. You should let him breathe." Those words stuck, even when I pretended they didn't. They made me question myself, question whether I was too controlling or too serious. I started doubting if I was the kind of partner Ethan actually wanted. That doubt was like a seed Samantha planted, and she watered it every chance she got. Looking back now, I can see it clearly. The signs were everywhere. Samantha wasn't just a friend tagging along. She was weaving herself into my place, piece by piece, and Ethan was letting her. At the time, though, I told myself it was nothing, that I trusted them both too much to believe they'd ever hurt me. I should have seen the setup. Planning the wedding had been the one thing keeping me steady. I threw myself into it, convinced that if I focused on making that day perfect, everything else would fall into place. I pictured the dress, the flowers, the music. Every detail mattered to me because it wasn't just about one day. It was about starting a life with Ethan. Samantha was right there through it all, standing beside me as my maid of honor. She acted like she cared about every decision, but there were moments when her excitement didn't seem to match mine. It felt different, like she was more interested in being part of it than in celebrating. As the big day got closer, Ethan grew more distant. I told myself it was cold feet, that nerves were normal. I held on to the image of us walking down the aisle, telling myself he would be the man I fell in love with again once the pressure was over. But then, just weeks before the wedding, he sat me down. He couldn't look me in the eye when he said it. "Claire, I'm not ready for this. I can't go through with it." I remember the way the room spun. My whole body went numb. I thought he was joking, that this was some cruel test. But the look on his face told me everything I didn't want to believe. The wedding was off. The man I had built my future around had just taken it all away in one sentence. Samantha was the first one to show up at my door afterward. She hugged me, told me I deserved better, said things like, "If he can't see what he has, then that's his loss." Her words should have comforted me, but there was something in her voice, something behind her eyes, that didn't feel right. She looked almost pleased, like she had been waiting for this moment. I tried to ignore that thought because it was too painful to believe my best friend could ever want this for me. The weeks that followed were a blur. I canceled everything, faced the questions from family and friends, and tried to piece myself back together. Nights felt endless, filled with thoughts of what I had done wrong, why I wasn't enough. I wanted to move on, but the betrayal kept replaying in my head. Then, a few months later, the truth I had been dreading showed itself. I found out Ethan wasn't just gone from me, he was with Samantha. They weren't hiding it anymore. They were living together, the two people I had trusted most, now building a life on the ruins of mine. I can't even describe what it felt like. Anger, grief, humiliation. It all blended together until I didn't know who I was anymore. They had taken everything I believed in and twisted it into something ugly. At that moment, I realized my world wasn't just broken. It had been stolen. After everything fell apart, I couldn't stay in the same apartment where I had once planned my future with. Every corner of that place reminded me of him, of US, of the life I thought we were going to have. The weight of it was too much, so I packed what little strength I had left and moved back in with my mom in Ohio. It felt like a step backward, like I was 20 again instead of a grown woman who was supposed to be starting her own family. Depression didn't hit me all at once. It crept in slowly, like a shadow that grew darker each day. At first, it was sleepless nights and mornings I couldn't drag myself out of bed. Then it became whole days where I didn't want to speak to anyone. I felt small, worthless, like I had been discarded. The man I was going to marry had chosen my best friend, and now they paraded their happiness for everyone to see. They didn't hide their relationship. In fact, they seemed to enjoy flaunting it. Friends back home told me how they would show up at restaurants holding hands, laughing, acting like they had won something. Samantha wore the smile of someone who had stolen the prize, and Ethan played along, as if the years we shared never meant anything. The humiliation cut deeper than anything else. It wasn't just losing them, it was the way they acted like I had never mattered. In a small town, news spreads faster than you want it to. I couldn't even go to the grocery store without hearing whispers. People stared at me with pity, their eyes saying what their mouths didn't. Some were cruel enough to say it outright. Poor Claire, replaced by her own best friend. I felt like a headline, a cautionary tale people told each other when they thought I wasn't listening. At home, my mom tried to comfort me. She told me I was strong, that I would get through this, but I couldn't believe her then. All I saw in the mirror was someone who had been used, tossed aside, and humiliated in front of everyone she knew. I hated myself for letting it happen, for not seeing the truth sooner. But underneath all that pain, something else was stirring. It wasn't clear at first. It was faint, buried under layers of sadness. But with every whisper, with every pitying glance, with every reminder of what had been stolen from me, that faint feeling grew. It wasn't hope, and it wasn't forgiveness. It was anger. They thought I was broken, that I would stay on the ground while they built their life together. They believed I had no fight left in me, but they were wrong. That anger was the one thing that kept me breathing, the one thing that stopped me from disappearing completely. They thought they had won. They had no idea what was coming. Starting over felt impossible, but I knew I couldn't stay stuck forever. After months of drowning in my own misery, I forced myself to apply for jobs. I didn't even know what I was looking for, only that I needed something new, something far away from the mess Ethan and Samantha had left me in. That's how I ended up at a law firm in the city. I wasn't a lawyer, but I had skills they needed: organization, writing, the kind of work that kept cases moving. The first day I walked into that office, I felt out of place. Everyone there carried themselves with a confidence I didn't recognize in myself anymore. That's when I met Margaret. She was nothing like anyone I had ever known. 45, sharp as a blade, always dressed in dark suits that matched the steel in her eye. People moved out of her way when she walked down the hall. She wasn't loud, but her presence filled the room. At first, she intimidated me. She didn't waste words, didn't hand out compliments, and had a way of looking at you that made you want to sit up straighter. But instead of avoiding me, she paid attention. She noticed how quickly I picked up details, how carefully I listened, how hard I worked to keep up. One afternoon, after I stayed late finishing a case file, she stopped at my desk. "You don't waste time complaining. You just get it done." "I like that," she said. That was the first sign she saw something in me I didn't even see in myself. Margaret took me under her wing in her own way. She didn't coddle, she didn't sugarcoat, she pushed. She gave me assignments that felt too big, then expected me to rise to them. When I made mistakes, she didn't let me wallow. She told me where I went wrong, then demanded I fix it. At first, I thought she was being hard on me, but I realized she was shaping me into someone stronger. More than the work, she taught me how to think differently. Margaret didn't believe in letting betrayal slide. "When someone cuts you down, you don't cry about it," she told me once. "You get up, and you make sure they regret ever thinking you were weak." Her words cut deep because they mirrored everything I had been too afraid to admit. She spoke in a way that made me realize I didn't have to stay broken. I could fight back. For the first time since my world had collapsed, I felt something that wasn't pain or anger. I felt power stirring inside me, guided by her. Margaret wasn't just a boss. She was a force of nature, and under her watch, I began to believe I could become one too. What I didn't know then was that Margaret would be the very woman who would show me how to bring Samantha to her knees. Working under Margaret changed everything about me. Piece by piece, I started to rebuild myself. I no longer woke up feeling like a victim. I was learning how to stand taller, speak with more confidence, and carry myself in a way that demanded respect. The firm became more than just a job. It became the place where I was proving to myself that I wasn't weak anymore. For the first time in a long time, I felt independent. I didn't need Ethan. I didn't need Samantha. I was creating a life without them. But life has a cruel way of circling back. Through people in town and quiet whispers that always seemed to reach me, I found out that Ethan and Samantha were working together on a new venture. They were trying to start a real estate business. The thought of them building something while I was still putting myself back together lit a fire inside me. At first, I tried to ignore it, but the anger returned, sharper than before. I couldn't let them succeed after what they had done to me. One night, while I was sorting through old papers at my mom's house, I found something that caught my eye. It was a strange familiarity in a document connected to their business. With Margaret's training, I knew enough to recognize the details that didn't add up. After digging a little deeper, I realized the truth. Samantha had used my old personal information to forge financial documents. She had taken pieces of my life, my credibility, and tied them to her business to make herself look more reliable to investors. That discovery hit me like a spark. It wasn't just betrayal anymore, it was theft. Samantha hadn't been satisfied with taking my fiancé. She had to take my name, my trust, even the foundation of who I was, to make her own life look better. It was one thing to betray a friend, but this was something else. This was fraud. I took the information to Margaret, my hands shaking as I handed her the papers. She scanned them, and her expression didn't change. Calmly, she set the documents on her desk and looked at me. "Good," she said. "Now you're starting to see how people like her work." I asked her what to do, expecting anger, expecting some plan for confrontation. But Margaret shook her head. "We don't confront," she said, her voice sharp and steady. "We dismantle." Those words settled into me deeper than anything she had said before. This wasn't about shouting or demanding apologies. This was about control. If Samantha wanted to build her future on lies, then I would be the one to pull the ground out from beneath her. And with Margaret guiding me, I finally believed I had the power to do it. This wasn't just about healing anymore. It was about justice. Once Margaret told me we wouldn't confront but dismantle, everything changed. I no longer felt powerless. Instead, I had a plan, and with her help, I began to put it into motion. Together, we started gathering evidence. Quietly, carefully, without Samantha or Ethan ever realizing eyes were on. Margaret had connections, people who knew how to follow money trails and dig through paperwork. Piece by piece, we uncovered what Samantha was doing. She wasn't just using my old information. She was cutting corners everywhere. Falsified numbers, hidden debts, and even signs of money being shifted into accounts that didn't belong to the business. It wasn't just sloppy, it was criminal. Each document we found was like a nail in the coffin she had built for herself, and she didn't even know it. Ethan, on the other hand, was as naive as ever. He had never been good with details, never the type to read the fine print. That weakness became our advantage. Samantha put contracts in front of him, and he signed them without hesitation, trusting her completely. He thought he was securing their future together, but what he was really doing was digging himself deeper into her. I almost felt sorry for him, almost. Margaret saw opportunity where I saw pain. She told me, if you want to bring someone down, you let them destroy themselves with their own greed. And that's exactly what we did. Through Margaret's network, we created the appearance of an interested investor. It wasn't me directly, it couldn't be, but it was close enough for me to watch from the shadows. The investor showed interest in Samantha's project, asked for paperwork, and waited. Samantha, thinking she had landed something big, rushed to provide everything. That's when all her lies were laid bare. She had no idea I was behind it, no clue that every signature she forged, every number she manipulated, was being collected and tied back to her. She believed she was too clever, too slick to ever be caught. Samantha had always thought she could outsmart everyone, especially me. But what she didn't realize was that this time, I wasn't alone. I had Margaret, a woman who had seen people like Samantha before and knew exactly how to break them. Watching it all unfold gave me a strange satisfaction. For so long, I had been the one left out, the one betrayed, the one humiliated. Now I was the one pulling strings. And the best part was, Samantha didn't even see it coming. She thought she was winning, while in reality, she was building the trap I would later close around. For the first time since everything had fallen apart, I felt in control. The pieces were in place. Now it was only a matter of time before Samantha walked straight into the downfall she had created with her own hand. The day of the meeting came, and everything Margaret and I had worked toward led to that moment. Samantha thought it was going to be the biggest step forward for her business, the kind of meeting that would finally prove she was capable of running something important. She walked into that room with her head high, dressed like she already owned the world. Ethan was right beside her, smiling like a fool who had no idea what was about to happen. The investors were seated around the table, calm but sharp-eyed. Margaret's presence was there too, though quiet and professional. I sat back, unseen as the architect of what was coming, letting Samantha play her part. She laid out her pitch with confidence, passing around documents she believed made her look powerful. She had no idea those very papers were the rope she was tightening around her own neck. When the investors began asking questions, the tone shifted. At first, it was small details, numbers that didn't add up, dates that didn't make sense. Samantha tried to talk her way through them, laughing lightly as if it was a misunderstanding. But then the bigger pieces came out. The forged signatures, the fake credentials, the trail of manipulation that had been traced directly to her. Her smile faltered. The color drained from her face. She looked at Ethan for support, but he was already sweating, already panicking. When the pressure hit, Ethan did what he always did. He saved himself. He blurted out that he had no idea what Samantha was doing, that she must have handled all the paperwork on her. He threw her under the bus without hesitation, desperate to protect himself from going down with her. The room grew colder with every passing second. Samantha tried to argue, to twist the story, but the evidence was stacked too high against her. Every forged piece of information, every fraudulent detail, was right there in front of the people who mattered most. It wasn't just embarrassing, it was damning. That's when her eyes found me. In that instant, she knew. She realized I had been behind it, that I had been the one pulling at the threads until everything she built came apart. The shock on her face turned into rage, but it didn't matter anymore. She was trapped. I stood, calm and steady, and walked over to her. She stared at me like she wanted to tear me apart, but I didn't flinch. I leaned in close enough for only her to hear. "You always thought you were smarter," I said softly. "Guess again." The look on her face was something I will never forget. For the first time, Samantha wasn't the one in control. She wasn't laughing, she wasn't smirking, she was exposed. And there was no way out. That was the moment I finally felt the weight lift. She had taken everything from me once, but now it was her turn to lose it all. It didn't take long for Ethan's world to crumble after that meeting. With Samantha exposed, their business collapsed almost overnight. The investors pulled out, legal trouble loomed, and the money he thought he had was gone. For years he had relied on charm and blind trust to get by, but this time there was no one left to protect him. Samantha was too busy trying to save herself, and he was left standing in the wreckage of their choices. I hadn't expected to hear from him again, but one evening he showed up. He looked nothing like the man I once planned to marry. His clothes were wrinkled, his face tired, and his confidence gone. He stood on my doorstep, clutching at whatever pride he had left, and begged me to talk to him. "Claire, please," he said, his voice breaking. "I made a mistake. I see it now. I never should have left you." For a moment, I just stared at him. There was a time when those words would have undone me, when hearing him say I was the one he should have chosen would have felt like victory. But standing there, I felt nothing for him anymore. The love I once had was gone, burned out by betrayal and replaced with something sharper, clarity. He tried again, stepping closer. "We can fix this. I'll do better. Just give me another chance. You're the only one who ever really cared about me." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I looked him in the eye and spoke the truth I had been carrying for so long. You chose her over me, I said quietly. Now you get to live with her mistakes. The words hit him harder than I expected. His face crumbled, and for the first time, I saw him for what he truly was: weak, selfish, and empty. He had destroyed what we had, and now he wanted me to save him from the consequences. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I didn't exist for his comfort. I stepped back, letting the silence stretch between us until he understood. Finally, he turned and walked away, shoulders hunched, carrying the weight of everything he had lost. That was the last time I saw him. In the end, Ethan ended up exactly where he deserved to be, alone, broke, and shamed. He had thrown away loyalty for temptation, and now he had nothing left. I didn't celebrate his downfall, but I didn't mourn it either. It was simply the end of a story I had once been trapped in, a story I was finally free from. And as his figure disappeared into the night, I realized that shutting the door on him wasn't just about rejecting him, it was about reclaiming myself. Samantha's fall didn't stop at that meeting. Once the evidence was out, the consequences followed quickly. The forged signatures, the fake credentials, the money she shifted around, it all caught up with her. Legal authorities stepped in, and soon she was facing charges she couldn't talk her way out of. The woman who once bragged about having everything under control was now fighting to stay out of jail. Her business collapsed, the debts piled up, and bankruptcy became her only way forward. For someone who had always loved to show off, the silence around her now was deafening. People who used to admire her wanted nothing to do with her. Friends disappeared, investors turned their backs, and she was left standing in the ruins of her own lives. It was almost too perfect. The same way she had once left me broken, she was now broken herself, only worse because there was no one left to pick her up. While her life was unraveling, mine was moving in the opposite direction. At the firm, I wasn't the timid new hire anymore. I had become someone people looked to for solutions, someone trusted to handle the toughest tasks. Colleagues respected me not just for my work, but for the way I carried myself. They saw strength in me that I hadn't even known I had until Margaret drew it out. Margaret never gave long speeches or warm encouragements, but I knew she was proud of me in her own way. She had taken me in when I was at my lowest, shown me how to fight back without shouting, how to win without begging for fairness. She had taught me strategy, patience, and above all, self-respect. Without her, I might have stayed the broken version of myself that Ethan and Samantha created. Instead, I became someone they could never touch again. I didn't spend my days thinking about revenge anymore. That part of the journey was over. What mattered now was the life I was building, the independence, the confidence, and the ability to stand on my own without fear. For the first time in years, I wasn't surviving. I was thriving. Still, there are moments when I think back on it all, on the girl I used to be who trusted too much and questioned too little. I almost don't recognize her anymore. That version of me is gone, and in her place is someone stronger, sharper, and far less forgiving. Samantha once believed she was smarter than everyone else, that she could take whatever she wanted without ever paying the price. But in the end, she lost everything, and I walked away with my life back. She thought she was the smartest woman in the room, until she met the one who taught me how to bring her to her knees.